we're using some time right now to really look at how we're leveraging our tools to make certain that we're capturing data that can give us a better and more clear snapshot of what's happening in the organization. But at the end of the day, if you are doing sales mindfully, it could take one call or email to get to the right person if you've done it in a really intentional, authentic way versus pepper 100 people's inboxes with the same email. I'm more about the intentionality of what is going out.
This is the Pass the Pitch podcast with Anna Frazzetto. Each episode, we sit down with bold thinkers and industry trailblazers to uncover the strategies, stories, and sparks of inspiration that drive growth and transformation. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to the show. Today, I get to spend time with a dear friend and colleague. Megan, I'm so thrilled that you're here today on the podcast. I actually wanted to share a quote that you have on your LinkedIn. And the quote goes like this: "In my work, I'm driven by a mission to create meaningful connections that make a difference for businesses and build a brighter world for tomorrow." End quote. Also, in your role as the CEO and founder of McCann Partners, you're an IT staffing leader and a champion for creating a more inclusive workforce. And that's some of the area that I really would like to spend a little bit more time and dig into. Your dedication to equality extends beyond your role as CEO. You are a co-founder of a dear organization to me, ARA, Attract, Retain, and Advance Women in Technology. It's a national organization advocating for women in technology and leadership through mentorship events and programs. So welcome to the podcast.
It's such a delight to be here with you, Anna. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Absolutely. And long overdue. We go back many years. We're not going to say exactly how many years. We go back many years. But I plan to kind of focus on a couple of different areas. And one topic that resonates, and actually you and I were talking about this recently at the TechServe conference, is driving growth in an organization during volatile times. I'm sure you're hearing it. I hear it with every conversation that I engage with anybody that's in the industry, not just staffing industry, but across all industries. How do you manage that? And what do you do to try to propel the organization to go forward? What are you seeing?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It's so timely. I would have thought actually that, we were having these questions years ago when COVID kicked off and then had some great years and it's come full circle. And I think the only thing that we can control is our own activity at the end of the day. And I try to tell my team that all of the time. How you manage your time, how you spend your time, the activities that you're doing each and every day to propel growth, whether you're on the sales side or on the candidate delivery side, it's up to us as individuals to fine tune that, particularly in difficult times, right? And I've never felt in the sales arena, there's a one size fits all approach to sales. And so now is really the time, I think, to hone your craft even more and be more intentional in the outreach that we're doing, the conversations that we're facilitating, the messages that we're sending. Blanket emails don't work. Cold calling does not work. There's a need for all of it in a sales process, but you really need to get creative and think of engaging ways to show value to clients. And I think that only gets more important during difficult and volatile markets.
Yeah, and you bring up some great points. One of the areas that I focus in on is sales process. Right. So you're saying like sales process is probably the most critical thing right now. Stick to the process because it's going to benefit you in the long run.
You know what I would say, Anna, that's such a great question. I would say, for example, for us, we're using some time right now to really look at how we're leveraging our tools to make certain that we're capturing data that can give us a better and more clear snapshot of what's happening in the organization. So we use Bullhorn for our CRM, ATS, back office. And we're really just looking right now to make certain that we're entering the information well. I would say many organizations track calls and emails, and I do think there is a formula there. But at the end of the day, if you are doing sales mindfully, it could take one call or email to get to the right person if you've done it in a really intentional, authentic way versus pepper 100 people's inboxes with the same email. So I'm more about the intentionality of what is going out. That's not to say that if someone sends 5 emails a day and that we should call it a day. That's not it, right? So it's a delicate balancing act. And I think when you work with seasoned people and you understand the mission, we all then take that mission to heart and can do the good work that we need to do.
Right. And you mentioned a key point there if you're working with seasoned professionals, because you're right, there's a little bit more flexibility when you have a seasoned professional. And I love the way you put it, the intentionality, because that is so key. Um in managing teams, I'm sure you've seen this before in the past. I've often seen where if you give people metrics saying like, 100 call outs, then they just start fudging numbers and not really focused on what they need.
Right.
Yeah.
We wrap goals around activity and certainly around, more so around meetings than outreach, right? And even more so around meetings than new opportunities, because if you're getting meetings and you're talking to people, we always say, talk to anyone, right? I mean, it's kind of a little bit of an exaggeration, but the conversation might lead you to the next conversation, which leads you to the next, which may lead you to the business, right? But if you hadn't had that initial discussion, it may not have even come to fruition.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, I'd like to kind of move now to another topic that I know that we are both passionate about, and it's impact of culture, right? And there's so many different meanings to that. Is impact of culture like the culture of a company and how that impacts you on a day-to-day basis and how you impact the output that you put out there as far as helping others? Is culture the diversity of talent that we have and diversity within our teams? To me, the topic is near and dear because being first generation in this country, I really do feel that when you look at the diversity component, that it actually adds to diversity of thought, right?
Yes.
Diversity of problem solving, right? And that's the really key ingredient, I think, to a lot of what can help drive organizations forward. But I mentioned Ara, for example, up front. Maybe you can kind of share a little bit about like the Ara story, also, from your perspective, the importance of culture.
Yeah. I think that great strategy is the enabler of culture. So you have to understand where you're going in order to have it be part of your culture. And for me, and you were a great motivator, driving force behind me starting McCann Partners. And so when I reflect on the journey, it was always to do something differently and better. And starting McCann Partners was also a way for me to really double down on how important diversity is to me. And there are many definitions to diversity, but much to your point, it's when you bring people with different backgrounds, opinions, life experiences to a table to solve problems. That diversity of mindset, of experience, of skin color, of ethnicity, religion, whatever it is, there's so many, right? It is going to create better solutions for our clients. And so when I started McCann Partners, I wanted to be really mindful of that message as we talked with our clients and as we were helping them build teams. And the ebb and flow of sales and recruiting over the years that I've even had McCann Partners has changed so dramatically, but always wanting to bring to the forefront the importance of bringing different people together to support an organization's growth, whether it be internally to McCann Partners or externally to the clients that we're supporting. And, Aura was a little bit of a byproduct, actually, a lot of a byproduct to that, because years ago, I was in a room with my Aura co-founders, Leslie Vickery and Jane Hamner, and we were 3 of 5 women in a networking event. And I'm dating myself, but this was when at the end of the evening, you could belly up to the bar and have a cigar. And there are plenty of individuals who identify as women that love to smoke cigars. The 5 of us did not, and so we immediately felt like we were on the outside of any conversation that could happen throughout the rest of the evening, and we said we need to do something about that, and that started with a dinner for senior executives in technology that you have been part of, over the years, and then eventually grew to Aura, and the notion, as you mentioned with Aura, is to attract, retain, and advance women in technology and leadership. And I think we actually started it a little bit on the early side in comparison to where we are today with so many things that are happening in the workforce. But, when you just look at some of the challenges that people who identify as women address in our industry, both as technologists and as those supporting the industry. We've got the glass ceiling, the glass cliff, the broken rung, motherhood penalty, the mommy cliff, the lack of access, sponsorship gaps. We've got all of these things. And the real idea with ARA was to try, and with the dinner that we started, was really to bridge those gaps and create more inclusive environments. And I think when you do that, that's also where culture comes in. And so you're doing it to support your people, and they feel more supported. And when people feel supported, they perform better.
So true, right? If you feel included, I give an example of, starting a new job, and you don't know, like, you're kind of sitting in your cubicle area and you want to be, social, and you ask, somebody saying, "Hey, I'm going to go get coffee. Would you like, a cup of coffee also?" And the person kind of says, "No, I'm in the middle of something." And now you fast forward to a couple of days later, and what happens is a group starts forming next to this individual that's sitting next to you, and they all get up to go get coffee, and they don't ask you. Now, it's a simple thing, like, they don't know who you are, you're new to the organization, but that feeling, that sinking feeling that you get that you don't belong, or you're being, excluded, hurts. Right?
Yes.
It playing the simple,
Yes.
it hurts. And you're like, well, oh, what could I be doing differently? I asked, the day before, and now I'm not included. And it is a conscious decision that every employee has to keep top of mind. And I always say, be aware of your surroundings.
Yes.
See what's going on around you. If you're sitting in a cubicle, be aware, is somebody feeling like that they're left out?
Yes.
And that is a management responsibility. You want your teams to feel that they belong and that they're included.
Yes. I think one of the interesting things, we had been a remote company before COVID. And so for us to adjust to COVID in some ways, being remote was not all that difficult. But something really interesting happened. We never used platforms to communicate with one another. We weren't on video with one another, and until COVID, because we were doing that with our clients and our candidates. And so all of a sudden, we shifted, and it became a way for us also to have eyes on one another, to check in, to make certain that we were okay, right? It also, from a leadership perspective, forced me to ask different questions, because if you don't sit each and every day with a team, you don't see how that person is from day to day necessarily. You don't have eyes on them the same way you do when you're in an office. So the addition for us of video made it helpful for us to see, oh gosh, this person doesn't quite look themselves today. And then you would ask offline or go to them. But I'll tell you, even as we've progressed and have returned to more normalcy of being around people, we are still remote. And I had a situation earlier this year where I felt someone on the team was just a little bit off. I couldn't tell you why, couldn't
Mhm.
put my finger on it, but I invited her to coffee. Now, little did I know that was the worst thing I could have done, because I was doing it with the intention of checking on her and making certain she was okay. Her immediate response was, "Is something wrong? Am I being fired? Are you letting me go?" Which was not the intention at all. And I said to this individual, absolutely not. If we had been in an office together, I would have said, hey, let's go take a walk and grab a coffee, or do you want to have lunch? And I could have achieved the same thing. When we are remote and hybrid, we have to find other ways to be very intentional with this, interaction. And I think it was a great reminder for me in the future to say, there is nothing wrong. I just want to have some quality time with you. Could we grab lunch or a coffee? But even just change my wording around it to make them feel good and better about it, and included, and not like there's something wrong.
Right. And that's another key point. I think, like, if you're in an office, I know myself, my brain is going 100 miles an hour. So when I see a person, it's almost like it's in the middle of a conversation because I expect them to know exactly what I'm thinking. But when you're in person, the other individual can vibe off of you, and they get it and they know where you're coming from. But a lot of times, if you're doing that on email, where you're like, hey, by the way, do the
Yes.
following on such and such project, it could come across as, oh, wow, is Anna upset? Like, why? There's no like, hi, how are you? How's your day
Yes.
going? There's no pleasantries. And so I now actually pause before sending an email, go back and say, okay, no, wait, let me write. Hi, how are you? How is your day going? Hope,
Yes.
let's catch up soon, and add the what I call is like, complete your sandwich, right? So like that, the person receiving it understands where you're coming from.
Yes, yes. And having been with you recently, we had a whole conversation where we didn't even finish sentences. We were finishing thoughts because we both were on the same page. But you don't always have that luxury when you are remote or communicating over email. So it's a great reminder to kind of take a beat for sure.
It is. And actually, we had the opportunity to see a great speaker, Ryan Leake, recently. And he talks about, like, he calls it like the flyby management, where you're kind of, when you're in an office, that you go on, hey, how are you? Hey, how are you? But you're really not waiting for a response. And him, highlighting the fact of pause, look the person in the eye and say, no, how are you really? What's
That's
going on?
right.
Like,
Yeah,
how's the family? And make that connection super, super powerful.
I agree. And he was fantastic. I'm in the midst of reading his books. We'll have to compare notes
Yes.
afterwards.
Great,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, definitely a great, great speaker. All right. So now it kind of brings me to talk about our favorite subject. And I say this somewhat sarcastically. How do you balance, family, health, well-being, and work? And the reason why it's so important, I do think that COVID highlighted some of the challenges, and I think it brought to light uh, mental illness, right? Mental health being an
Yes.
issue. Handling more people have anxiety, and how do you handle that? And then you look at yourself as an individual and say, okay, well, what can I do to make sure that I'm not 90% work and only 10% for everybody else? Any
Yeah.
suggestions?
Oh gosh, I wish I had a secret formula for everyone. I think the formula is that it's always changing, and you need to check in with yourself to see where you are at any given moment, and give yourself grace for wherever that is, right? In my household, if I feel like everything is going great with work and I'm eating and exercising really great, then like I open my closet and things are like falling out at me, or there's a pile of laundry that needs to be attacked, or whatever. The dishwasher hasn't been unloaded. Instead, I keep loading more into it and running it again. And so I think it's more about, there's a shift, and it doesn't matter in my mind if you have people in your home, or you're alone in your home, or you're alone with furry friends in your home, right? It's going to shift, and we have to just give ourselves grace to know that there are cycles, and the cycles will go. And I am, as you know, notoriously poor at asking for help. It is it is a muscle that I'm working on. I'm also practicing saying no,
Mhm.
no. And that helps sometimes, but I don't know anyone that has it right perfectly at any given time. And I think the greatest thing I, we can do for ourselves is take care of ourselves first, whatever that is. If it's making certain you get your meditation in, I am religious with my gratitude journal. That to me, if I don't do that, that's when I start feeling the effects of how everything is coming at me. And so, whatever those rituals are that can really fill your cup so that you can then do all of the other things you need to do for your family, your coworkers, your clients, that has to be a number one priority.
Yeah, and I have to say consistently in doing this podcast with the other guests that I've been talking to, it's a common theme to, take care of yourself first, because then you could be a better person to whoever you need to support externally. So that is a valuable lesson. And you're right. I mean, we all struggle, but I think if we have the awareness, that makes the struggle a little bit easier, right? Because then
Yes.
like, okay, I haven't worked out in 2 weeks, but it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna get back on it. I've been handling some other priorities. So there's a little bit of that priority shift. So
Absolutely.
I know
Absolutely.
not
Yeah.
not easy, but our furry friends definitely make a difference for both of us.
They do. They do. I literally said to someone earlier today, um, you know, Toby, who is my cat, who's right beside me at all times, is it he's like a service animal to me in some respects, right? He knows when I am upset, he knows when I am happy. He just is there, and it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if I've had the worst day. It does not matter if I've had the best day. It does not matter if I have made a mistake or if I have not showered. He just is there and happy to see me, and I know that's how Chase is for you.
Exactly. And you know what? It's that unconditional love that you get, and you don't have to put on a happy face. Like sometimes we do for family or coworkers, right? We kind of, yeah, let's rally when you really don't feel like rallying. But yeah, there's nothing like furry friends. I think that's the secret sauce to a good balance in life.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Maybe that's what everyone should have.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now we're going to have a little bit of fun, Megan, not to put you
Mm,
on the spot, but I am
okay.
going to end the podcast with some fun questions, a little bit like the Colbert style of interviewing. So,
Okay.
the first question that I have for you is, what's the most unusual item on your desk right now?
Um, Crystals. I have crystals around me at all times. I tuck them in pockets. I wear them in things when I am out and about. I've got one in every single room, but I always have this abundance bundle by my computer when I'm working. So it doesn't matter where my computer is, in my kitchen, in my office, the abundance crystals are always right next to me.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Okay, great. Okay, so what's your guilty pleasure song that you never want anyone to hear during a sales call?
um, I would say old school rap, and I don't know if you've ever seen the Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake series. It's called The History of Rap. They have a couple I don't know how many versions of it, but that can get me so happy. And I honestly couldn't tell you what I did this morning, but I can remember every word to the old school rap that I grew up on.
Oh my god, that's great. That's great. Okay, now, who would play you in a movie?
Um, Rachel McAdams.
Oh, I
I've actually seen her acting sometimes and feel like I'm looking a little bit. There's something about her at times when she has red hair that reminds me of myself.
oh, good one. That's a good one. Absolutely. Okay, so if you're a superhero, what would your sales-related superpower be? Besides reading minds, because I've had everybody come up with
Yes.
reading minds.
Yes.
What
Reading
else?
minds, yes. Gosh. Well, if there was a way to manifest unlimited opportunity, that would be one. So there was always a full pipeline. Um, and I know you only asked for one. I think the other one I would say is resilience, because you really, to persevere in turbulent markets, to persevere through challenging clients, challenging situations, you really have to have resilience and grit. Um, so it would be a toss up between the two of them of what I would wish for.
No, that's great. That's a great one. At one point I was tempted. I want my superpower to be that I just magically show up at the client's office and say, "Sign the SOW."
Yes. Yes. And you could just fly from one location to the next.
Right,
That's
right.
how you can spend 8 hours a day every day.
Exactly. Okay, what's one word your colleagues would use to describe you on a Monday morning?
Focused. Focused. Yeah. We start Mondays together in a meeting, and we always move to fun by the end of the meeting, but I'm always very focused on my Mondays. It's, I've planned out my week. I know what my schedule is going to be. I know what we need to get done. And so I think they get that version of Megan during our Monday meeting.
That's great. That's great. Well, Megan, listen, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and look forward to having more conversations.
Thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
Thanks for listening to the Pass the Pitch podcast with Anna Frazzetto. Don't forget to subscribe and share. In our next episode, we talk to Delibra Wesley about leadership, mentorship, and growth through challenges. See you then.